Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&As. So let's go ahead and knock this out. All right, first question. Hey Jason, longtime subscriber, follower since the bodybuilding.com days. I'm applying for the fire department and need to pass their physical fitness test in academy. I let my bulk and conditioning get a little too far out of hand, and I'm sitting at around 25% body fat at the beginning of my cut. How would you suggest I incorporate cardio conditioning and adjust diet without losing too much muscle? And to aid in my testing for career goals. Thanks. Keep up the good work. All right, I'm going to tell you right now, don't do any low intensity cardio. Jack your protein up. Don't let your fat slip so low that you develop vitamin deficiencies, and try to get enough carbs to fuel your training, right? In other words, nice small caloric deficit, and try to maintain your strength, right? Go to a maintenance program for your barbell work, and you need to be doing general physical preparedness. You need to start doing, for your conditioning, start doing the stuff you're going to be tested on, like carrying dummies and stuff up and down ladders, right? All that stuff that you're going to have to do, right? So what I'm going to recommend, because of, again, the fire department type stuff you're going to do, it's going to be dragging hoses, it's going to be carrying stuff up ladders, all that stuff, right? Do that for your conditioning. Start incorporating it right now. Maybe go on a full body program 3 days a week, and you're going to want to spend 3 separate days outside of that doing higher intensity GPP work, sled drags, right? To basically replicate dragging those hoses, carrying dummies up and down the ladders, backpack carries up and down the ladders, all that stuff. You need to start doing that. That's what you need to do. Do that for your extra caloric burn. That will have direct transfer to your testing. It'll help you lose body fat without cutting into muscle mass as much as other forms of cardio would. That's what you need to do, brother. Get yourself on down to 20% or lower body fat, and I think you'll be perfectly fine. You'll be perfectly fine for what you're trying to do. All right, next question. Jason, in an earlier video you said ass to grass squats de-emphasize the hamstrings and may be slightly inferior to parallel squats in terms of hamstring development. How did you come to this conclusion? From what I've observed, ass to grass squats produce more efficient, more gross weight use ratio than does parallel squat. This would lead me to believe there's less injury with the ass to grass squats as well. In the end, I know it doesn't matter very much. A squat's a squat, and I don't think the hamstrings are stimulated very well in any kind of squat anyways, not even the low bar, as people so frequently argue. Have fun, bro. Keep it up in 2019. You know, actually, the data is coming out more and more that plain old conventional deadlift hammers the hamstrings overall harder than most hamstring exercises do. So you're probably onto something there. I think the point we come to with that, and I think Ripto and them actually have some good charts showing that. The problem you have with the ass to grass squat is that you do disengage the hamstrings, and that would normally be fine because continual tension doesn't really matter that much for development. That's a bullshit bodybuilding myth. But the fact of the matter is you're disengaging a muscle and using less weight. That's not good. In other words, if you have a muscle that is being engaged less, so you're using less muscles through part of the range of motion, and that's cutting out weight that you can use, that may not be a good thing. That may not be a good thing. Plus, we deal with the fact that in some cases, posterior pelvic tilt, things like that at the bottom of the ass to grass because of, again, the hamstring issues. I don't necessarily think ass to grass is better for hypertrophy in this case. Normally, I would say increasing range of motion, even if you lose a little bit of weight on the bar, is a good thing. But when we have muscles cutting out and no real benefit to doing so, I don't know that the ass to grass squat is going to be better for hypertrophy in this case. I think what we have to look at is effective range of motion, right? We have to look at, is it effective range of motion? And I think for most people, around a parallel squat, maybe a hair below, is probably going to be closer to ideal for your range of motion versus all the muscles activated, weight use, everything else for hypertrophy. You know, but at the end of the day, I would say, does it matter a lot? No, because a squat is a squat. And I don't think the extra 2 or 3 inches range of motion one way or another on heavy, fatiguing barbell squats is going to matter in the grand scheme of things that much for hypertrophy. All right, next question. Hey Jason, for this training cycle, I had to drop lower body training due to a hip injury. Well, that sucks. And I've been focusing on upper body. A press pull up day and a bench / row day. Started with 6 sets of each at 70% for 6 reps and have been adding a set each week, trying to hit the same reps each set while keeping the weight constant. Getting into 11 sets this upcoming week, and reps have stayed constant for the most part, but I think I need to deload in a week or two. Question: for a higher volume phase, I think this was a successful approach, but what could I have done better? Thanks for all the informative content. If you are a novice or an intermediate, I think this is terrible. If you're an advanced lifter, I think this is actually pretty smart. Like if you're a pretty advanced lifter and you've milked out almost all your noob gains, you've finished intermediate type programming, I think this is a good way to add some extra growth and maybe break through a plateau. In other words, you're doing what we would call accumulation work, essentially, where you're increasing volume continually to increase total workload, total metabolic fatigue on the muscles, so that in another phase you will have hopefully hypertrophy so that you can increase tension. Right? Advanced lifters have to do stuff like this. And in all honesty, I think what you did with the exercise selection, those 4 different lifts staggered that way, I think that's actually reasonably smart. I think you did a good job. And here's what I would say. If you feel like you're about to have to deload, if your accumulation work has pushed you to the point as an advanced lifter where you need to deload, like you feel that need, you're seeing the signs, I don't know that we could have done things any better. I mean, if you think about it from that perspective, if you've overreached with accumulation work to the point to where you need a deload, I think you've hammered your body about as much as it can handle. Means you've probably created as much adaptive stress as you can. What I would say is, though, when you finish that deload, you need to go to more tension. So what I would say, you need to increase weight and go into a heavier phase. But I think with this phase, it sounds like you did a good job with it. I actually like what you did. I like it. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I have spent some time building up my squat, weighted pull-ups, and Pendlay rows, and I want to begin deadlifting again in my full body system. If I deadlift once a week, do you think a 1x5 would be sufficient, or would a 5x3 help me relearn and add weight back to the bar faster? I don't think you should do volume deadlifting until you have to. In other words, high volume deadlifting or taxing, it's a powerful tool, but it's a tool I don't think you should use unnecessarily due to the fatigue it creates. The overall training fatigue and the way that it will reduce your ability to train other things. You shouldn't do high volume deadlifting like that. And I would say even five sets of deadlifting is high volume. I would say if you don't have to, then don't do it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think doing 1 peak set every week, if you've built up good strength on those other 3 exercises, that's going to carry over. I think you will get the motor pattern down and bring up the weak links doing 1 set a week. Right? Do that for a little while. When that stalls and it stops working, then increase the volume. But I would say at any given point, most of us can, at certain points in our training, increase our deadlift off of a single set. And if you can increase your deadlift off of a single set, you should do so. Don't resort to adding sets on the deadlift till you have to. That's what I would say, particularly when you're going heavy. All right, next question. If you were to test a max on squat, bench, or deadlift after daily max training, how would you go about it? Would you take a week off or deload? Or would you just take 2 to 3 days off before? Thanks, coach. I would say take 2 to 3 days off. You'll be fine. 2 or 3 days off and you'll be fine. Now, what you need to remember is take someone like Greg Knuckles, who's done an enormous amount of personal research and work with clients and everything on this style of training, right? Daily maxes, Bulgarian light, whatever you want to call it. What is it that he noted? That early on in the training, your daily maxes will be 5 or 10% lower than your true max. What happens the longer you do this system? Before long, your daily maxes will eventually turn into pretty much competition maxes. Didn't John Bros note the same thing? He has guys, John Bros always says he has guys setting records every day in the gym, and then they walk into a meet and hit the same stuff they hit in the gym day in, day out. You see a lot of guys who do this style of training who don't necessarily surpass their competition lifts. And if they do, it's oftentimes very, very, very little who train this way for long periods of time when it comes to comps. And it's because you get so acclimated to hitting maxes and your neural efficiency gets so high with hitting singles that there is no difference. There's almost no perceivable difference in the weight you can lift when you're psyched up versus walking in calm and just hitting a lift. So what Greg has noted is that oftentimes people who've been running this style of training for long periods of time, sometimes their true competition max is only 2 or 3% higher than what they're hitting in the gym day in, day out. So if you get to a point to where you're squatting 500 pounds every single day, and you even do any deloading or anything, and then you walk into a meet, you might only add 2 to 3%. So you end up with what is that? 505, 510, 515, maybe if you're really lucky. And then when you try 525, you get pinned. So in other words, you're going to reach a point to where you're pretty much at 97% or higher intensity day in, day out, when you're calm and just walking in with no stems, no pre-workouts, no music, and just hitting a squat. Because you get efficient at hitting singles and you no longer really benefit from that stuff. You're just primed all the time. So take 2 or 3 days off, you'll be fine. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 3.